I didn't tell my cousin my fiancé works at the same office as her husband. My cousin Kat married Henry in March, and since then she won't shut up about how much money they're making. We weren't close growing up because she spent family parties bragging about designer stuff while the rest of us played outside. Now at every holiday she finds a way to mention Henry's tech salary or their future house plans. My fiancé Chris is a software engineer and co-head of his department. 3 months ago he told me they hired new people, and one was named Henry. I asked his last name and realized it was Kat's husband. Chris hadn't met him face to face yet since Henry was working remotely that week. I thought about texting Kat, but figured she'd either brag about the connection or make it competitive. She never asked where Chris works, so I never mentioned it. My Aunt Diane threw a dinner party for her 50th birthday last month. Kat and Henry sat near us, and Kat immediately started talking about Henry's salary being higher than his previous job. Henry said they're already house hunting in the expensive neighborhood. Kat turned to me and asked what Chris does. I said he's a software engineer with a good job but left out the company name. She smiled and said she understands I'm embarrassed about money and want privacy. When we were leaving, she pulled me aside and offered to help pay for our wedding if we needed it. The condescension was obvious. 2 days later, Kat sent me 8 angry messages. Henry went into the office and saw Chris there. Chris told Henry to let Kat know we don't need help, but thanks for offering. Henry came home and told Kat that Chris is one of his 3 bosses. She said I embarrassed her on purpose and should have warned her. I texted back that she never asked where Chris works. She said it's basic family courtesy and I was being shady. I stopped responding. My mom called the next day saying Kat was complaining to everyone that I set her up. I told my mom I didn't mention Chris's workplace because Kat didn't ask, and she makes everything into a competition. My mom said I should apologize to keep peace. I refused. The monthly family dinner at my uncle's house was 2 weeks later. I almost skipped, but Chris said that would look guilty. My cousin Troy asked immediately if Chris is really Henry's boss because his mom told him. Several relatives clearly knew. Kat and Henry arrived 20 minutes late. Henry looked sick walking in. He shook Chris's hand and apologized for any confusion. Chris said no problem. Kat sat at the opposite end of the table and stayed silent. My uncle asked Henry how the new job's going. Henry gave short answers like it's fine and he's learning. My Aunt Diane asked about house hunting. Kat said they're waiting to save more money. The table went quiet because 2 weeks ago she wouldn't stop talking about buying immediately. My younger cousin tried changing the subject, but everyone had noticed. I was in the kitchen after dinner when Kat walked in. She said I should have told her about Chris to avoid this. I said she should have asked instead of assuming we're broke. She said I knew what I was doing. I told her every time she learns something about someone she turns it into a chance to brag. She said that's not true. I pointed out that at Diane's party she heard Chris is an engineer and immediately made it about Henry's higher salary. She called me jealous. I laughed and said I'm not jealous. I just don't want to deal with her constant one-upping. She left looking like she might cry. Henry found me minutes later and apologized. He said Kat feels stupid and his coworkers are making jokes about the family connection. Kat's worried it'll hurt his reputation. I felt bad for Henry because he's just a normal guy in an awkward spot. I told him Chris doesn't treat him differently and people will forget soon. He thanked me. The next family gathering was my grandma's birthday 3 weeks later. Kat and Henry showed up, but Kat looked miserable the whole time. When people asked Henry about work, he kept answers super brief. My Aunt Rachel asked Kat how wedding planning is going for us and if we need vendor recommendations. Kat said she's sure we have it handled. It was the first time I'd ever heard her not jump at a chance to talk about her own wedding or offer advice nobody asked for.